I want you to go to your kitchen right now and look at the bread sitting on your counter. Most of us grew up trusting bread. It's the most basic food there is. Flour, water, yeast, salt. What could possibly go wrong with something that simple? Here's what nobody told you. In February 2026, Florida's Department of Health pulled 8 of the biggest bread brands straight off grocery store shelves and sent them to a certified laboratory. 6 out of 8 came back positive for glyphosate SAO, the active chemical in Roundup weed killer. Not residue left on the farm, not trace amounts from nearby fields, in the finished loaf, the one you sliced this morning, the one sitting in your bread box right now. But here's the part that stopped me cold. The worst results didn't come from the cheap brands. They came from the ones with organic labels, the ones marketed specifically to health-conscious families, the ones people pay a premium for because they believe they're making the safer choice for their kids. One brand tested above 1,000 parts per billion of glyphosate, one of the highest levels ever recorded in a packaged consumer bread. You shop there. You trust them. I'm going to tell you exactly who it is, but I need you to stay with me because the 3 brands that actually came back completely clean are just as important. We're counting down all 10, from concerning to genuinely shocking, and finishing with the 3 that are actually worth buying. Let's get into it. Number 10, Great Value Whole Wheat. This is Walmart's house bread, the one that fills carts across America every single week because it's cheap, it's familiar, and it's always in stock. For a lot of families, it's simply what bread is. Before you open the bag, try something. Press on it. It compresses completely and bounces straight back like a foam cushion that's been shaped into a loaf. Hold it. Squeeze it. That behavior is your first clue that something engineered is happening inside, because real bread doesn't feel like that. The Detox Project and the Environmental Working Group found 340 parts per billion of glyphosate in Great Value whole wheat through independent laboratory testing. Regulators will tell you that's legal. The EPA's ceiling for glyphosate on wheat is 30,000 parts per billion. And if you're a healthy adult in your 30s eating that one food in isolation, maybe that math holds. But it was never calculated for someone already getting glyphosate from their morning cereal, their afternoon crackers, their pasta at dinner, now adding it again from their lunchtime sandwich. Exposure stacks. The regulatory math doesn't. Walmart generated over $713 billion in revenue last year. Sourcing cleaner grain is not a financial constraint at that scale. It is a marginal decision. The 80 cents you saved on that loaf came with something that was never listed on the label. And the next brand on this list costs significantly more and delivers the exact same problem. Number 9, Market Pantry Organic. Target spent years positioning itself as the smarter, cleaner alternative. Better design, more thoughtful sourcing, the store young families choose because it just feels more intentional than the competition. You walk in and everything tells you that you're making better choices here. Their Market Pantry whole wheat sandwich bread carries a USDA organic seal right on the front of the bag. It tested at 348 parts per billion of glyphosate in independent laboratory testing. Higher than Wonder Bread, higher than Nature's Own. An organic loaf with the seal and the premium price coming in with higher contamination than the conventional brands people buy specifically because they can't afford the organic version. Here's how that happens, and this part matters. It's called drift contamination. When a conventional farm that sits adjacent to an organic operation sprays herbicide, the mist doesn't stop at the fence line, it travels, wind carries it. The USDA organic certification verifies that the producer did not intentionally apply glyphosate. It cannot verify that none arrived from a neighboring field. Drift testing isn't required. Target doesn't publish it. A mother reaches for this loaf specifically to protect her children. She pays the premium, she reads the seal, the certification is completely legitimate, and the contamination is also completely legitimate. The law that would require anyone to close that gap between the two simply doesn't exist. Organic label, 348 parts per billion. No required disclosure. That is not consumer protection. That is a hole the industry has quietly decided to leave open. Number 8, Oro Wheat Organic. This is the craft brand that quietly stopped being one. 2 families started baking bread together in Los Angeles in 1932. They called it Oro Wheat. For decades, it was a genuine regional institution, family-owned, California-made, quality-focused. The kind of brand that earned its reputation one loaf at a time over generations. In 2009, Grupo Bimbo acquired it. Since then, Bimbo has also absorbed Arnold, Sara Lee, Entenmann's, Thomas English Muffins, Ballpark, and dozens more brands that most Americans still believe are independent companies competing against each other. They are not. One multinational corporation now controls what you think are separate choices. When Bimbo absorbs a brand, the supply chain follows. Same flour suppliers, same wheat sources, the same grain, potentially pre-harvest treated with glyphosate as a drying agent, flowing through their broader industrial network. The Environmental Working Group reported 70 parts per billion of glyphosate in Oro wheat, whole grains, 100% whole wheat, back in 2018. Bimbo reformulated certain products after those results went public. There has been no publicly available independent glyphosate testing on Oro wheat organic since. The last number on record is still 70 parts per billion, from 2018. Bimbo generates $22 billion in annual revenue. If they are testing every batch, they have not published the results. Longtime customers describe the pre-acquisition bread as denser, grainier, more varied in texture, the kind of inconsistency that tells you something real was being baked. What sits on shelves today is uniform, soft, and engineered to hold that softness through a long retail window. You are paying for the logo. Everything else was replaced years ago. Number 7, Nature's Own. Flowers Foods is one of the largest bread companies in America, $5 billion a year in revenue. Nature's Own is their flagship product, and that name is doing a tremendous amount of work. Natural, wholesome, a bread that implies it came from somewhere intentional, from someone who cared about what went into it. In February 2026, Florida's Department of Health tested Nature's Own butter bread. The result came back at 190.23 parts per billion of glyphosate. Their perfectly crafted white returned at 132.34, but the glyphosate is only part of the story. Read what else is in the loaf. Calcium propionate, a preservative that peer-reviewed research has connected to behavioral effects in children. DATEM, a chemically modified fat used to strengthen dough structure. Sodium stearoyl lactylate, an emulsifier that maintains that engineered softness for weeks past any natural freshness window a real loaf of bread would ever have. Squeeze the bag. That pillowy give isn't freshness, it's a formulation. In 2025, a video spread widely online showing someone soaking a single slice of Nature's Own with water, wringing it out completely, and watching it spring back to its original shape without tearing. A slice of bread, soaked through, wrung out like a dish rag, and it came back. That is not bread. That is a sponge that has been shaped into a loaf. In July 2025, a class action lawsuit was filed in California federal court alleging that Flowers Foods falsely markets certain Nature's Own products as containing no artificial preservatives, while ascorbic acid appears directly on the ingredient label. Flowers has denied the allegations. At $5 billion in annual revenue, cleaner sourcing is not out of reach. It simply compresses the margin. And margin is what gets protected. If that loaf is in your kitchen right now, you know what you have been eating. If this is already changing how you see your bread aisle, stay with me. Because we are about halfway through, and the next few brands are where things get genuinely serious, including a premium organic label with no published test data anywhere, not one result, anywhere. Number 6. Arnold Organic. Arnold has been on American shelves since 1940. USDA organic on the front, whole grains listed first, the combination that signals trust without requiring you to look further. Arnold is owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA, same parent as Oro Wheat, same $22 billion industrial operation. Here's the specific problem. Sara Lee has been independently tested for glyphosate. Nature's Own has been tested. Dave's Killer Bread has been tested across multiple years by multiple independent labs. Arnold Organic, from the same parent company that owns all of them, has no publicly available glyphosate test results anywhere. We're not claiming Arnold's numbers match Sara Lee's worst result. We can't, because the data doesn't exist publicly. What we can say is that Bimbo's track record across every brand they control makes this silence very difficult to explain. They paid for the organic certification. They haven't shown you what that certification actually delivers. The ingredient list adds context. Organic soybean oil, organic cane sugar, cultured wheat flour, ascorbic acid, geometrically uniform slices. Texture that holds for weeks at room temperature. Real bread doesn't do that. 85 years of brand equity. No public test data. That's not reassurance. It's a question the company has decided you don't need answered. Number 5. Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread doesn't claim to be organic. It claims something more powerful, the American family staple. The loaf your grandmother trusted. Nostalgia has been doing the selling for decades. Florida's Department of Health tested Wonder Bread Classic White in February 2026. 173.19 parts per billion of glyphosate. Read the ingredient label alongside that number. Calcium sulfate, the same compound used in construction drywall, enriched bleached wheat flour, stripped of nutrients, bleached white, then fortified with synthetic vitamins to replace what processing removed. A loaf that collapses to almost nothing when you squeeze it, then fully recovers the moment you let go. 2 slices a day for 40 years is close to 30,000 individual servings. Breakfast toast, the lunch sandwich, the bun at every backyard cookout for 4 decades. Here's what matters. Your body starts reducing its chemical load as soon as you stop adding to it. The next clean slice matters more than every contaminated one behind you. But Wonder Bread sold you a grandmother's kitchen and delivered something she wouldn't have recognized as food. Number 4. Sara Lee Honey Wheat. 70 years in American kitchens, honey in the name, wheat on the label, warm golden packaging that signals wholesome and carefully made. Florida's Department of Health tested Sara Lee Honey Wheat in February 2026. 191.04 parts per billion of glyphosate, the highest single reading in Florida's entire testing round. Higher than Wonder Bread, higher than nature's own. Now read the label carefully. Honey is in the product name. Corn syrup is in the ingredients. One is marketing, the other is what's actually sweetening the bread. Keep reading and you find calcium sulfate, the drywall compound, alongside monoglycerides and DATEM. For anyone managing type 2 diabetes, that formulation is actively working against your blood sugar control with every slice. This compounds daily. In early 2025, a video showed a Sara Lee loaf sitting at room temperature for over 3 months with no visible mold. Unchanged. Bread that refuses to spoil was designed for a warehouse shelf, not a human body. Sara Lee is owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA. Same parent as Oro Wheat and Arnold. Number 3. Pepperidge Farm. The red bag. The old-fashioned lettering. The bread people reach for when they want something that feels genuinely a step above everything else on the shelf. Baking since 1937. This is the entry that surprised me most. Independent lab testing found 587 parts per billion of glyphosate in Pepperidge Farm 100% whole grain whole wheat. Their Jewish rye and pumpernickel deli swirl tested at 531 parts per billion. Nearly 3 times Nature's Own's Florida result. Worth noting, Pepperidge Farm Farmhouse Hardy White showed no detectable glyphosate in Florida's February 2026 testing, but their whole grain and rye lines are among the most contaminated in any independent testing reviewed. The reason? Glyphosate is used as a pre-harvest desiccant. Farmers spray Roundup directly onto standing grain days before harvest to accelerate drying. That application concentrates residue in the outer hull of the kernel. Whole wheat bread retains that hull. So the product marketed as the healthier choice can carry higher contamination than white bread, where the outer layer was stripped away. Bayer, the manufacturer of glyphosate, has paid approximately $11 billion to settle nearly 100,000 lawsuits from people who developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Bayer continues to deny that glyphosate causes cancer. Shoppers report a chemical off-taste, quality decline, and shrinkflation that reduced the loaf from 22 ounces to 14 while the price held steady. You are paying a heritage premium for grain sourced the same way as every other industrial brand on this list. Number 2, Dave's Killer Bread. This is the one health-conscious shoppers reach for with complete confidence. Bold packaging, dense seedy loaves, a founder's redemption story on every bag, USDA organic certified, non-GMO, project verified. Nutritionists post about it, trainers recommend it. Millions of people bought it because they genuinely believe they already solved the bread problem. Then the lab results came back. The Alliance for Natural Health found 136 parts per billion of glyphosate in Dave's Killer Bread whole wheat. Florida's Department of Health found 11.85 parts per billion in their white done right variety, 10.38 in their 21 whole grains and seeds. Lower than the conventional brands. That's precisely the problem. Lower is not the same as zero. A brand built entirely on being the gold standard of organic bread has made a specific promise to every person who buys it. These lab results are a specific, documented gap between that promise and what's in the bag. You are not paying a premium for almost better. Flowers Foods acquired Dave's Killer Bread in 2015 for $275 million. The founder story stayed on the bag. The industrial supply chain moved in behind it. Same parent company as Nature's Own and Wonder Bread. The packaging looks independent. The ownership is not. In September 2024, a class action lawsuit was certified in California federal court alleging the company misleads consumers about protein content on their good seed and 21 whole grains and seeds front labels. Flowers has denied the allegations. The story on the bag sells the product. The lab results describe what's inside it.
Number 1. 365 by Whole Foods. Amazon owns Whole Foods. Whole Foods sells 365 brand organic bread. Whole Foods built their identity around what they refused to carry. Bromated flour, banned. Artificial colors, banned. Their list of unacceptable ingredients contains over 80 substances. Every part of the store communicates one message. Here, the standard is different. Independent lab testing found glyphosate at 1,040 parts per billion in 365 whole wheat sandwich bread. 1,040 parts per billion. The highest number on this entire list. In a store built specifically on the promise that this would never happen. You paid the premium. You chose the store with the reputation. You picked the house brand organic loaf because you trusted what it stood for. The lab found 1,040 parts per billion of weed killer in it. Amazon acquired Whole Foods in 2017 for $13.7 billion. Former executives have described a more centralized, more industrialized supply chain, replacing the sourcing philosophy Whole Foods was built on. Decisions driven by logistics metrics rather than ingredient standards. The industry will say 1,040 parts per billion is still below the EPA's ceiling of 30,000. What they won't mention, a 2015 King's College London peer-reviewed study found that ultra-low doses of Roundup, below what regulators even measure for in food, produced measurable changes in gene expression in laboratory rats. Not industrial doses, ultra-low. Those tolerances were designed for a healthy adult in their 30s eating one food in isolation. Not for someone in their 70s on blood pressure medication eating bread on top of cereal, crackers, and pasta the same day. If the retailer built entirely on refusing to compromise can't keep its own bread clean, what does that tell you about everything else in that aisle? Now that you know what to avoid, here are the 3 that actually held up. These are not consolation prizes. They are brands that test their finished products, publish those results, and source their grain differently from the very beginning of the supply chain. Number 3. Food for Life. Ezekiel 4:9. Start with something most people do not know. There is no flour in Ezekiel bread. None at all. Food for Life sprouts 6 organic whole grains and legumes: wheat, barley, millet, lentils, soybeans, and spelt, then bakes them slowly at controlled temperatures to preserve nutritional density. This is not a reformulated industrial loaf with better marketing. It is a fundamentally different process from the ground up. Food for Life carries the biochecked, non-glyphosate certified seal. This certification does not simply verify a process, it verifies a result. Glyphosate residues in the finished product are undetectable at the laboratory's detection limit. That is the standard every brand on the avoid list should be held to, and isn't. Ezekiel bread scores approximately 36 on the glycemic index. White bread typically scores 70 or above. For anyone managing blood sugar, that difference is not minor. It is meaningful at every single meal. 11 ingredients, all of them recognizable as food. No added sugar, no preservatives, no dough conditioners, no compounds with construction applications. Food for Life has been family-owned and baking in Corona, California since 1964. No multinational acquisition, at least not yet. One practical note. Look for it in the freezer section, not the bread aisle. Without preservatives, this loaf molds at room temperature. That is not a flaw. That is proof you are holding actual food. Safe Pick 2, 1 Degree Organics. 1 Degree does something almost no other bread brand bothers to do. They publish the farm source for every single ingredient. Scan the QR code on the bag and trace the wheat back to the specific field where it was grown. Not the region, the farm. They carry the biochecked non-glyphosate certified seal and submit random product samples to accredited third-party labs every month. No law requires this. They do it because it's the only way to actually prove what you're selling. 7 ingredients, all real food. No DATEM, no calcium sulfate, no monoglycerides. Distribution is limited. You may need a natural grocer or direct order. That inconvenience is what happens when a brand hasn't handed its supply chain to a $5 billion operator. Safe pick 1. Silver Hills Sprouted Bakery. If you want a clean, everyday sandwich loaf you don't have to think twice about, Silver Hills is the most practical recommendation on this list. Canadian family-owned, every product carries the biochecked, non-glyphosate certified seal, with residues verified below detection limits continuously, not annually, continuously. When the WHO's IARC classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic in 2015, Silver Hills publicly stated that it shaped their sourcing standards. A company that responds to evidence rather than lobbying against it. Plant-based, nut-free, non-GMO verified, certified vegan. The Omega Amazing variety is a verified source of omega-3 ALA for heart health. Available at Sprouts, Whole Foods, and natural grocery chains across the U.S. Every batch tested, every result verified. The texture is hearty, but soft enough for a sandwich straight from the bag. The most approachable switch for anyone who doesn't want to rethink what bread feels like. Before you close this video, here is the one rule worth keeping. Stop buying bread sold at room temperature with more than 5 ingredients on the label. That single rule removes almost every brand from the avoid list from your cart. No ownership research required. No lab databases to memorize. In the store, flip the bag and count. Real bread is flour, water, yeast, salt, and perhaps a small amount of healthy oil. 5 ingredients. Everything beyond that was added to extend the shelf life, simulate freshness, or reduce sourcing cost. When you see the USDA organic seal, know what it actually certifies. It verifies that glyphosate was not intentionally applied. It does not and cannot verify that glyphosate is not in the finished product you are holding. 2 certifications that require actual laboratory testing of the finished loaf are biochecked non-glyphosate certified and non-GMO project verified. One is a promise about the process. The other 2 are proof about the result. Buy from the freezer section when you can. Bread that survives weeks at room temperature was built for the supply chain. Bread that hardens or molds within a few days was built for you. Clean bread costs more. Roughly 50 cents a slice at the high end. That is still considerably less than managing the long-term health conditions that accumulate silently from decades of daily contamination you were never told about. The labels were built to earn your trust without earning it. Now you know how to see through them. If this changed how you think about what is in your bread, pass it to someone who buys these brands every week. Is probably the most useful thing you can do with it.